Okay, so we got the recording going, and we're going to cover, first we're going to cover our pristine mind, Orgyen Chowang Rinpoche. And this is Cheryl and Barbara. So it's all yours.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say that I'm probably ill-equipped to do that, Bruce. So if you have to chime in at any moment, please feel free to do that. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
we took a look at our pristine mind. I started with chapter 25, but I kind of summarized his writing to begin with, and then Cheryl's going to take you through each of the stages. She did a wonderful job on that, so you'll be excited about that.
If I can figure out how to move the screen. I usually know how to do this all the time.
Is this in slideshow? Is it in slideshow mode?
It's in Canva, yeah, in slideshow.
So you should just hit the arrow on the keyboard going right.
Oh, okay. Marvelous. All right.
We did all this stuff. We can't hit an arrow on a keyboard. I love it.
No, I'm just trying to get this thing out of the way now. This because it's kind of in our way. I'll put this down on the bottom. Okay, so are we pretty? I think I can move this over to the side too. Somehow. It's pretty good. All right, I could just put this down here. Okay. All right, Barbara.
Well, Mr. Robuchon, and I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'll ask you to help me. He is a meditation master in Nyingma lineage of the Buddhist tradition, and I found a short bio on one of the websites that you can go ahead. It's actually one of his websites if you want to get a little bit of a bio on him. Very interesting man. He self-proclaimed the goal of his pristine mind as to create a guide to the entire path of meditation in one book. It's interesting because when he started this, he could not speak much English, but he made it a point to learn correct English, to speak in plain language, and I'll tell you a little bit more of that on the next slide. He writes with compassion and objectivity and carefully thought out, practical, jargon-free language. Orgyen Chowang Rinpoche leads readers in a straightforward, stepwise spiritual journey beyond the veil of present reality to the process of awakening our enlightened nature through meditation practice in daily lives. Guided meditation in each state of our pristine mind builds on the preceding stage and empowers readers to gradually experience mind free from feelings, thoughts, barriers, and other mental events that obscure awareness. Mind becomes increasingly free from misperceptions, distortions, and barriers to enlightenment as we progress through our spiritual journey.
Oops, I can find the words. Just bear with me while I read this.
We'll take a little overview of chapter 25, which is the highest stage of awakening. And it's just a summary here. In stage 4, the highest stage of awareness, mind is in perfect harmony with the universe. We respond to events in boundless love and all-encompassing compassion. In our pristine mind, we experience our true, flawless mind without any distractions. Enlightenment is a measure of how well our mind is aligned with reality, undistorted by the ordinary mind, which misperceives on the basis of desires and aversions that characterize our unenlightened happiness and security. That's okay. I lost a slide. That's okay. You go ahead.
Was there a slide?
Yeah, but it's okay.
Oh,
don't worry about it. You go on.
Okay. So I thought it was important. I don't know. I didn't know what a Rinpoche was. I just hear Bruce talk about all the different ones all the time, and I didn't know what actually Rinpoche meant. So I thought it would be maybe it would be helpful to all of us to just understand the meaning. Maybe some of you already know all this, but I didn't. So it means in the Tibetan language, the precious one. It also means gem, and it's an honorific term, typically, a scholarly association, and it's used to address the highest lamas. And so then I thought, I don't really know what a lama really is. We hear the Dalai Lama, and we hear of lamas all the time, and I didn't know that it actually means the superior one, it's spiritual leader, and it can usually translate sometimes to a guru, and in Sanskrit it means the venerable one. So and it's applicable to the head of monasteries and great teachers, and apparently sometimes there's some distinction as to who can call who what, but we won't get into all that. So I guess I guess people have different ideas about these terms and distinctions for the monks and scholars. And so Orgyen Chowang, he's a Tibetan Buddhist monk, and he's a scholar that came to study, teach, and write in the USA. He was invited by a friend, and I think in 1995, he had very little command of the English language, just like Barbara said. Oh, geez. Sorry.
Like the title.
So let's see what happened now. How now all of my stuff has been revealed, all my messy stuff. So I can't even figure out where my share is.
Now for something completely different.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Wow. Okay. I double clicked on that. Oh, your screen is paused. Oh, okay. So, I'm going to stop the share and start the share because something happened when the phone call came in. It interrupted everything. Sorry about that. Now let's see. Oh, resume share. Oh, I didn't see that right in front of my nose. Interesting. Pretty funny, huh? Wow, I don't know what to do. Let me try again. Stop the share and then share screen. Get the desktop. I want to share. I know what I did wrong. I think I was clicking on the presentation. Okay, you're sharing the screen. Now I've got to go find, where did I hide the presentation? Where did it get to? Let's see.
It's usually easier to put the presentation
okay.
on top. Okay, good.
Yeah, it just got pushed to the side whenever the phone call came in. So he started writing this book before he had much command of the English language. And I found that just like remarkable that he was willing to take on such a task. That must have been incredibly difficult. And but he really felt, he started working with groups in Silicon Valley. I think it was Silicon Valley, somewhere in that arena. And he was trying to help them understand meditation. And this is what led him to write this book. He wanted it to be accessible, like Barbara said, in a single book, which is a pretty lofty goal, I'd say. So I thought, he broke it down that there's 4 stages of awakening to enlightenment using meditation, and I think maybe we'll all relate to where we are in dog life in our own meditative practices. So in stage 1, he says, this is where we start observing our mind and everything that is there, our emotions, our everything we're feeling, our body sensations, and there's all kinds of things that are, we're noticing. And it seems like a pretty swirling mess sometimes when we start meditating in the beginning days. And then we start to get glimpses of, a restful mind, and we might only be able to access that, for a moment of stillness, at a time, of what the pristine mind is about. But at the beginner stage, we're really sort of toing and froing all over the place often. And I found this one, I know for years in my early practice of meditating, we may even find ourselves judging our practices as if we even know what a flawless practice looks like. And I thought that was pretty hilarious, because I know I did that for a long time. And I thought, oh my goodness. And we become aware of our, we're how full of emotions, habits, tendencies we have. He used this wonderful analogy. He said, our minds blow around like a feather in the wind with little control in stage 1. And we have difficulty understanding the interruptions as the mental events. It's one of his words he uses throughout the book. Mental events we create that influence our perceptions of reality. And I think that is a pretty powerful concept to grasp. And then he brings forth, kindness and compassion, asking us to seek patience with ourselves and to continue to stick with our practice. And again, he says in the beginning, we may only be able to meditate for a few minutes before we start thrashing about and our minds just run off in any direction. And he said, this is how the normal ordinary mind operates. And we're going to talk about the ordinary mind as we move through this momentarily, versus the pristine mind. As we continue our meditation practice, the time between these mental events will eventually lengthen, and we start to see profound change. And I've noticed that in my own practice. It's been quite a journey, and it's been profound. And he said, 5 to 10 minutes may be all you can do at first, but he says we should strive for, 20 to 30 minutes in the early stages. And he said, this is the start of our work of working to understand our minds, what our minds do, what happens when we sit and try to do nothing but rest. So I thought this was a great image of our minds are like a feather just floating around, going in all directions of wherever the wind is taking it. And I know I can relate to that. I'm sure many of you can too, when you pay attention. And then we get to stage 2. And as we continue our practice, no, I can do it. We start to mark this stage with our thoughts, emotions, and habits. And these are the mental events. And we start to see that they start losing their strength and control and attention that we give them. And we start to, it's noticeable that we start to see it, those things are dissipating. And so our mind environment is starting to change, and we can start to be in a pristine mind state for longer periods of time. So we have fewer disruptions that occur from our ordinary mind. And then, it's bad news for our ego-based mental events, but it's a good sign of our awakening. And he also says that, when we're not meditating, we do go back to our ordinary mind. And then as we evolve, our ordinary mind starts being taken over by the pristine mind. But we do have to conduct our lives and do things. And so we can't all stay just in a meditative state. But he shows that you can get to being meditative while you're doing any task that you're doing in your daily life. So he says, by stage 2, if you're still having difficulty controlling the mental events, he says it might be a time to seek a teacher to help guide guide us. And especially if you've had 2 years of steady practice, he thinks you might need some help from somebody to move you along in this path. And he says we notice that we've become more tolerant of like the mental events, and as they fade away, we watch them unravel with little disruption to our practice. They come and they go, and we start again. And we, and I find that was another thing. It took me a while to understand that that's just what happens, and it's just letting them unravel and keep on going. And he says our minds start to take on the quality of a spring breeze as opposed to a harsh turbulence of winter winds. And I thought that was a wonderful analogy. Again, he starts to suggest our mind starts to feel softer and gentler. And he says that in this stage, we often gain a lot more confidence and enthusiasm for our practice. And I can attest to that. That's been true for me as I've grown in meditating. And he says this is the greatest gift we can receive is in this second stage of our awakening. And then again, mental events and the distortion of those just start dissipating. And he says this is where our good heart starts to expand. And he then talks about, these transformations create a profound shift in the mode of our perceptions as they evolve. And under these circumstances, enlightenment can happen. And our thoughts and emotions change from negative to positive and no longer hold a charge. That's my language. I try to use his language nearly as completely as I can because it's important to him to use his words. But I'm human, so I did add a couple little things. The contents of our mind shifts, and we start to feel things like splendor, clarity, beauty, and love. They slowly replace our agitation and our primordial fear of the world that we used as fuel to create our mental events. We used to use, and we do often, if we're not, in an enlightened state or an advanced state, we do use sometimes primordial fear to, conjure up all kinds of mental events. And it's just fascinating to me to see how much we do to create our own harm or suffering. So the way we perceive shifts, and we start to become known by noticing our changing thoughts and emotions. And the more our perception shifts, the more the contents of our minds shift, which leads to continuous improvement in the direct opposition of our ordinary mind with negativity. And then the tone of our mental events weaken, we suffer less, and our mind gets clear. Lightning grows closer. And I thought this was a wonderful analogy. You're wondering, what is this? And he said, when you're starting to gain some mastery is if you observe a horse and he's got flies on his tail or flies on his body, and a horse will just flick it away very simply. He doesn't get all disturbed. He doesn't grunt and groan. He doesn't stamp his feet. He just flicks his horse tail, and the fly goes away. And I thought that was a great analogy as to how we start working with our mind so that we don't have to go through these big harangues. We can just make a little adjustment and, just get the little fly out of the way, the mental event that's causing us. So I thought that was a great way to think about it. I liked his creativity and with some of his examples. So now we've reached stage 3. And so now we start to notice that our mental events have little impact in either both positive or negative direction. They just don't affect us the same way that they used to. So our thoughts, they don't disrupt our meditation as they've lost their importance. And our happiness is no longer external now, and our mental perceptions and projections are our friends, and they strengthen and support our practice and And I can tell you something that happened to me at a meeting today with a builder who's very high strung. He's really fun as a social person, but he's been difficult for me to work with him. And today he was like speeding along, checking up all these things with lots and going so fast. And I actually was able to sit there with him, and I just marveled at his mastery and command of what he does. And it was a profound shift. And I felt like maybe it was as a result of my practice and working with this book. And I felt really like this is an amazing thing that happened today. So here's one of Orgyen's another visual analogy. He says, our mind has become like a pond on Central Park in summer, where ice simply cannot form. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good indication that, you're really locked into, this new place. And our ego mind is not part of this state. And this is when we lose the self or sense of self. And this stage makes it difficult for any harmful thoughts to even form. The mental environment does not support negative events. Again, I think it's really cool when we experience this. It really is amazing. And I remember Bruce telling us, for the 2 years we've been doing this, he would share some of his experiences. And I really wasn't yet even able to glimpse at some of the things that he'd been saying. And I'm now experiencing some of it. And it's pretty darn amazing. The mind is almost completely pristine in this stage. We've got pure love, joy, happiness. And then the more mental events dissolve, the more we create positive habits, and our emotions are filled with a mental sense of well-being. And this is how natural, this is what now is naturally supportive, and it just keeps expanding more and more, just like the universe. We get going in a direction and we just keep, what is it? When you turn a bucket with water and it just keeps going, it's that natural, I guess, law. Mental events lose their power. They become, insignificant. Clarity of a pristine mind is now our predominant state of mind, whether we're meditating or doing other things in our daily life. And that is, I think, pretty amazing when I notice myself having that ability to just begin to move into that. And it's pretty exciting for me. I'm at that stage where I get momentary moments where I see that I'm bringing my meditative mindset to my regular life. And then I liked this analogy. Mental events are more like a shooting star across the sky. They come and they go with little consequences as they pass quickly. And then he goes on to tell us about how our mind can engage in many ways with us, and we can move fast to do what we need and want to do. That it actually really supports us in what we want to do in our, ordinary life, let's say. And now our mind does as we wish in this pristine state. And that's pretty remarkable to think that we can actually get to know our minds so well that we can actually control our minds and manage our minds in a different way. And in fact, instead of it driving the bus, we're driving it. And everything that arises in the mind is now a friend. We feel confident. We've lost our fears. We now operate from a cloudless, pristine mind. Our thoughts are now our allies, and we have mastery of our mind. We have an unwavering stability of our mind, even if we're doing other things. We enjoy our minds and no longer at the mercy of our mental events, because we've achieved stability and mastery. Oops. And this is a picture of, I think this is Central Park. And yes, when he puts it in the perspective, in the summertime, it is pretty hard for a pond to freeze. and I thought that was, again, I thought he really has some pretty profound observations. And then we finally reached stage 4. And this is, the highest level of enlightenment and awakening. And whatever arises in our mind, there is no more impurity or distortion. And we've progressed to, the pure perfection of the mind. There's no ego at work once full enlightenment is present. And the pristine mind is very comfortable, natural state, as no other sense of the self exists. And I know when Bruce first told us there is no self, I thought, oh my goodness, I couldn't imagine that. And it really is nirvana, and it really is amazing when we can experience those moments of no self. And it's different than anything we experience in our ordinary minds. It is the perfect state of being that's natural and effortless. And I thought this was also quite amazing. The enlightened person has the broadest and deepest view with infinite kind, compassion, and love. Like you really are sitting at the mountaintop of being able to look in the biggest picture of anything that you're putting your mind toward. You can. So we're not living in opposition to nature and the universe, and the world cooperates with us, and we are in harmony with the universe. And he likes to say the enlightened pristine mind is the real mind. It's undistorted by the ordinary mind. This is the normal state of mind, and the ordinary mind is the abnormal. And I find that like quite a good paradox. And he says that I like this, he used this analogy too, and I think we've heard this from others. There are no more barriers like the ocean and the waves. They're not separate, they're one and the same. And that's a wonderful image and a wonderful thing to, contemplate. And when we reach this advanced stage, we can traverse between meditation and regular life easily, as there are no barriers. Again, like the ocean and the waves. An ordinary mind eclipses into a pristine mind. And this is what I thought was a great video of that, the ocean and the waves are our self and our non-self coming together. And I think I missed a couple of slides too.
Yeah, I did. I just looked back at this. I missed quite a few. It's just, but you said everything that was on those slides, so it's okay.
And there was one little video. If we could play, I have one more video of a baby at 8 days old, and it's kind of like showing us what it really is like to have a pristine mind, because we're all born this way. And I thought that was pretty. If you want to see that, just let me know and I can serve that up.
Oh, it's a gentle thing. I think you can do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let me go find that. Might take a moment.
That's ready to pick up.
What I really love is the statement that he makes, that we do everything out of
One,
love, that we have an unboundless
either one.
capacity for love and compassion. I was thinking of the Ukraine while I was thinking that, and wondering what would happen if suddenly Putin became domesticate and had unboundless love and compassion for his neighbors over there.
That's pretty cool. Oh, I know. I think I'm back to losing my screen. Oh, let's see. I'm not used to doing this on my laptop, so I'm not as proficient here. Oh, maybe it goes like this. Maybe I can get, yeah, there we go. Okay, so now, I'll show you one other, I can show you, I found the other slides I was missing a couple slides. and this one made me laugh. I found this image and it made me think of the ordinary mind. This is to me my beginning stage of meditating. When I first started meditating, this is how it felt like to me.
Oh, that's great.
It was just all over the place. I couldn't control anything. That's how I was experiencing early meditation.
Are you showing us something? Because I'm not seeing it.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you, Ad. Okay, let me get back to
I don't know how we dropped all those slides.
I know, it was so weird. I don't know why we did either, but Zoom, I guess I gotta get the oh, okay, so I gotta get back to share screen, desktop, and now you have to go figure out where.
While she's doing that, I'll talk a little bit about the opposition to his writings. It was strange to me to find that a lot of the opposition talked, or some of the opposition talked about that the language was so easy to understand that it was a little bit elementary. And that's probably from people who have had more experience or are used to being in a lecture type setting. But I thought that was interesting because he made such a point of learning English in a way that would be practical and easy for others people to understand. I think he went through a lot of interpreters along the way.
So this was I thought of how could I represent the ordinary mind at the beach, just, you know, just a whole bunch of stuff, mishmash, and then the pristine mind. And I thought that was a good representation. And this was really helpful to me to put these words beside one another, of the ordinary mind and the pristine mind. And these are again, this is all Orgyen Chowang's, these are his words. So, you know, and as Bruce taught us, we have a self, and in pristine mind, there is no self. We live in a duality world. In the ordinary mind, in the pristine, it's no duality, it's all one thing. It's like the wave in the oceans. And the ordinary mind, it's unclean, it's messy, polluted, confused, chaotic, stressful, anxious, negative, a negative mindset. That's my word, that's not Origins. But it talks about negativity and positivity, distortion of perception, and driven by primordial fear. And then in the pristine mind over here, there's no self, no duality. It's clean, clear, flawless, authentic, happy, love, pure, loving, pure, positive mindset, confident, no distortion of perception, and a compassion for all. Now let's see if I can get to the next. Oh. And then we saw this. And then, so this is just a little leading up to trying to understand some of the, you know, the greatest art of the world is the Temptation of Saint Anthony. And there's two depictions here. It's been done by many great artists along the way. And I just loved who Saint Anthony was. I thought this was worth sharing. He was known as Anthon Abbot in 251 to 356. Now, this is quite a mouthful and quite a complex person. He was an Egyptian Christian Catholic monk. and he was famous for enduring his temptations provoked by Satan. So then these are, Bosch did the image of the temptation of St. Anthony on the left, and then Salvador Dali on the right. And my question to everyone is, was this done in an ordinary mind or a pristine mind? Because it's obviously considered great. And I don't know. but I just thought it made me and this also made me think of primordial fear. This is also Bosch, who did the other picture of the last painting. And I thought, well, if this isn't primordial fear at its best, I don't know what is. And this was done in 1490 to 1500. 5 years it took to create this amazing image. And again, I don't know, which came first, the chicken or the egg. Oh, and then we can show you the baby. The baby. Give me one more second here and we'll get the baby.
Where do you think Bosch came up with those images? I've always wondered that. He just strikes me as so bizarre, but
Yeah, it's
I
pretty
wonder
remarkable.
how he saw that stuff.
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Isn't it, Ad?
It really is. I mean,
Which mind was he in? Was he in a pristine state that he could see all that? Or was he in a state of, the ordinary mind and he was just so disturbed and that's what was coming up? And I think that's quite a question.
or was he on something? I don't
Well, that's
know.
another question. So, all right. So this is somebody's idea of, helping us try to understand what a pristine mind is, because the ordinary mind hasn't formed. The baby can't judge its meditation state. It can't, it just can't go into all these emotional events that are mental events. I don't think, I don't know, but it just, so here we go.
You don't need a special occasion to send a gift
of
like
course we
this.
have to
Spoonful of Comfort comes
wait for
with
this to
soup
go away.
bowls and cookies, and you literally don't have to do it.
Here we go.
Doesn't make sense. It's having the duplicate of the duplicate finding the original that we used. Mhm.
I think she is saying, what am I doing here? I made a mistake.
I know. I was enjoying my water bath daily. It's just amazing though.
That's a lot of information for a newborn. Between 14 days and 3 months, we're having eye development and everything that they're taking in, he doesn't have a frame of reference for. So that's kind of interesting.
Yep.
It's just is what it is.
And a little smile too. It's so cute. Okay, so that's what Byron and I did for the last week, amongst our other normal life, ordinary mind life.
I think one of the beauties of his work is the idea that happiness is attainable. Happiness is just not what we consider happiness, but happiness is a state of being. I loved that. It gives us something to aspire to. I think Bruce, you've said that oftentimes, that it's beyond our normal understanding. And some of the criticism of say his name, Orgyen
Chowang.
comes from, and this isn't mentioned, but it comes from the scholarly and the field of learning, because he talks a lot about misperceptions, and that usually has to do with the study of perceptions and sensations. And he really doesn't talk much about that. And also you could allude to the place of different types of learning, operant learning, social learning, imitation, when you talk about misperceptions. But I struggled with that for a while because of my background, and then I decided none of that really mattered anyway. What mattered was the process and getting to where you needed to be.
And the other thing for me I wanted to share, I don't know why, but I did not read the book. I listened to the book audibly. So I've never done anything like this before where I actually had to absorb something and then regurgitate it. So it was a wonderful exercise of using an audible book and then not having anything in writing to reference. So that was a fun and exciting experience.
I have a question, which is that I'm very curious about how we're born with a pristine mind, and through the process of growing up, our minds become polluted to the degree that we then have to learn techniques to move back towards pristine. Seems like a trip that one would rather not go on.
Yeah, in a sense if you're looking at it as a matter of perception and its sensation, it's almost as though I have a sense that we have to unlearn all those things that interactions have taught us in order to get back to a place of a pristine mind. Kind of decide, and maybe that's really wasn't true to begin with. Because of misperceptions, inaccuracies. Yeah, it could be very right. What we're taught, what we learn, definitely influences who we are, definitely influences what we think. And sometimes we just need a push, like reading this book or finding a teacher, and then you can begin to meditate and look at it in a different way through the process of meditation and moving from an ordinary mind to a pristine mind. Somewhere I haven't been yet, but trying.
Stephen, maybe one of the things that might explain or what made me think of your question is, our brains and our humans are kind of free ranging. We weren't really, we weren't made to be hemmed in, so to speak. But because we have this powerful engine, we don't always know how to use it. And so we develop some habits that aren't really in our best interest. And yes, it seems logical that we should be able to stay like in the pristine mind, but somehow we as the human condition, we get off that track. And maybe because that's the way we were made and designed, so that we have that, something good. I don't know what it is. I don't know that, but there's got to be a reason for why we were made this way, and that we have a difficult time staying the way we were born.
I think it also depends on what you really believe is happening with the newborn. If we believe that the newborn learns through all these things that are impinging on his senses, that's one way of looking at it. But if you believe, like Yanis has said, that the newborn really comes into the world with thoughts from the collective unconscious, then it puts a whole new spin on it.
The Kabbalists would say on that point that we can't really go back to the original pristine mind, as infants, which is a state of unity, but it's only through realization after the separation, which they would say is described in Genesis and the story of the fall, the fall from grace, where they realized that they were naked, they had self-consciousness, and that's a kind of wound. And then we go through this experience of exile, which is very central to the Jewish faith. But it's only through healing that we can enter to a new level of unity. And it's a reunification that's different. It's got more depth than just the infantile or amniotic unity. Probably the most perfect sense of unity is in the womb, where everything is, you've got this tube going into your belly and you're just floating, and hopefully everything's just kind of warm and fuzzy and safe, but you're not having the same kind of experience and development and digesting it. But that it's only through losing that original unity and going through the existential crisis of alienation and exile, and then coming to a new level of unity, is a different kind of fullness, because you're still incorporating experience through language, but you're moving beyond it. You're not limited by it, but you're still going through those tools of perception, the doors of perception that you didn't have to reckon with in the beginning. And they feel that animals are more in this state of unity also. And their behavior is governed by instincts, and humans don't really have, in the proper sense, instincts in the same way that animals do. We're not as programmed, but it's through the crisis of the separation and then bridging it that we come to a different kind of wholeness. And that's something that really resonates for me, that I really liked about Kabbalah. I don't know if there are similar concepts in Buddhism. I know that the two paths are often very parallel. Are there teachings like that, Bruce, about not returning to the original unity of the womb or infancy, but a higher level of unity through integrating the separation?
There's a kind of an overview understanding of consciousness that comes with the Buddhist understanding of the mind, and it kind of goes like this: volition based on ignorance leaves a momentum in the mind. In other words, for example, one of the my favorite graphic example is if you experience somebody who is sort of lost into rage and anger all the time, well, that's a momentum from probably killing somebody in a previous life. That's the kind of momentum that's left in the mind. So a lot of the formations of the mind that you grapple with as you get older are from that kind of a history. And you can transcend them. You can, through meditation and so on, you can clear the mind of those formations. And that's one of the things that happens when you do a lot of meditation. They just disappear. It's fantastic.
So
yeah.
out of curiosity, how does that momentum come forward? Because if it's from a prior life, and then you have the innocent child where that momentum is not recognized by the child, but it somehow blossoms. I won't say it develops, it just kind of appears.
Starts to unfold later in life.
And how does that occur?
I
What are
believe
the what are
teaching
the are there mechanics to it where it unfolds?
I believe that this is like from my astrological background, the teaching is that we attract patterns to ourselves that have to do with that past life karma. So
that trigger it.
exactly,
Okay.
but that's part of the pattern, which the idea is to transcend as best we can with, I would say awareness and detachment, but it's going to be a tendency that most likely will show in the chart. But
So that has a significant implication for free will then too. I mean, if there's momentum that exists before that's not recognized and then it's triggered by something, then is there any will in accepting the triggering of it? And I would suggest no, it's just happening. But
And
Bruce, do you have anybody have a comment on that? Because that's kind of interesting to me.
the closest analogy I can think of that is someone suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. They can be living their life and going on and figure that they're doing perfectly well, but then they're triggered by a smell or a sound or a position just turning a corner. I think it would be kind of like that.
So then they wouldn't have free will either.
well, but but that's the whole point of practices, of doing practice, is that it gives you tools to work with so that you're not just in this reactionary mode. At least not an instant knee-jerk reaction that you have absolutely no.
So
Consciousness about.
you can't tell, but I'm kind of smiling because that would suggest that you learn free will rather than you have it.
Well, I think it could be remembering or recovering it, or in some cases, I think it's very difficult for people to accept that they have free will. I think we have just as much trouble with that as denying that we have free will, because it means responsibility.
Yep. And I observe sometimes in myself and in others where, we put our own lids on our jars, that keep us safe in the world from doing different things, where we don't want to believe we could do X, Y, or Z. So we tell ourselves, why we can't, or that we shouldn't, or whatever we do that tamps down, our that we could do so much more. We often are our own limiting factors.
That's like the Marianne Williamson quote, right? Our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate, but that we are adequate.
Yeah.
Because to be empowered in that way can be very, very scary. And something that I heard between the lines a lot of what was shared from the book is we have such a tendency also to beat ourselves up.
Oh, yes.
Which is a real downside of the ego. Ego behavior isn't necessarily being full of oneself and being arrogant. Being really hard on yourself is a dysfunctional ego as well.
Be very defensive.
Right.
Yes.
And judging yourself.
Yes.
So, that wherever that judgment is happening, that's the issue. But that's where the liberation of practices can come in, is that it can, that's the purpose. It can liberate you from these default mode patterns that we apparently come in with. They're tendencies, but I don't believe they're written in stone. This is what I observed from 35 years of working with people. sometimes we have more free will than we want to have, than we want to acknowledge because of that question of responsibility. And sometimes we have so much less and we're kind of grandiose in what we think is possible. And it's often a question of, rearranging where we think it is and where we think it isn't. And assimilating that is a growth process of,
I
that's like the whole point, and that's what practice is for. And I love the saying, for example, and I was thinking of this, we don't have to believe everything we think.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I kind of mentioned is that, and Cheryl mentioned this in her presentation of what happens when you meditate quite a bit. What happens is that you notice some refined qualities of the mind start to happen that you didn't have before you started to meditate. So in a sense, what that means in a way is that there are some very refined resources that you have in your mind that haven't unfolded yet, but meditation helps you unfold those. And in a sense, if you apply that to free will, basically, there's a very profound, deeper understanding of reality that you can get to by meditating. That's part of your mind and has been there forever already. And a lot of the kind of the difficult habits that you've developed from this particular lifetime or from difficult karma in a previous life, and just all disappear. And then in a sense, a freer will arises in the mind, but it's based on wisdom of the deeper mind. Like when lots of love and compassion arises in the mind, there's a tremendous amount of wisdom that comes along with that is really outstanding, exciting, and awesome. So if you want to talk about free will, in a sense, what people think of as being free will is just difficult conditioning or habits. And the real will is much deeper in the mind. And after a lot of meditation, there it is. It starts to arise. It's awesome. It's one of the inspiring things about the meditating is it's self-motivating, because you tell all these beautiful things start to happen in daily life from meditating a lot. It's one of the aspects of meditation that's inspiring and motivating.
So just
I
to describe, could you give an example or two or three of beautiful things that happen in daily life because of meditation that you've experienced where you don't think those would have occurred if you hadn't been a practice yeah.
Right. Well, basically, when you start meditating after quite a few years, I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, is that you start getting very subtle understandings of the mind and reality that just spontaneously arises. You have a very definitive understanding that is extremely clear and full of certainty, because there's an understanding that is available that wasn't there before. Does that work?
I'm thinking of an example that I could share
Sure.
of a shift. I heard from, well, maybe that was later, that somebody said that the deepest work that she ever did in her spiritual development, this was a minister, was caring for her mother as her mother was aging and and ultimately dying. And I thought, I want to do that. You know, I want that experience. I had been meditating since my teens, and this was in my mid 40s after my father passed away. As we were planning my father's memorial service at the Unitarian Church, my mother had what they called a mini stroke. You know, compared to a massive stroke, yes, it was, you know, minor, but it wasn't really that mini for her. But I moved, I had been living in Vermont. I moved down here, kind of kicking and screaming, but I made the commitment freely. And I have a strong Mars in my chart, and it's connected to my South Node, which means probably a lot of life shines as a warrior. I have the signature of a lawyer, which I don't really like. I'm not really proud of that, but it's like square Mercury, which is language. So we're like warriors of words, people who can do that. I used to love arguing and debating. I really don't anymore. And so when I was taking care of my mother, she regressed in a lot of ways, which is natural. And we had to go through the role reversal process. And I just tended to have kind of an irritable vibe. And she had a lot of kind of childlike habits and ways that could be extremely irritating. You know, they were very challenging to me. They triggered my anger, which was, you know, my default mode was to be exasperated and irritated. And this mantra sort of came to me after a while that said, well, you don't have to go to anger. You know, you just don't have to go to anger. And that started to free up that instantaneous reaction on my part that I could just say, like, okay, she's doing that. And it didn't have to affect me. It became just what she was doing because she had her own, you know, as one of her neuropsychologists said, it was kind of a perfect storm in some ways between her personality, her upbringing, you know, she grew up in the Depression and blah, blah, blah. And that it could be her perfect storm that I didn't have to get involved in. And it wasn't like I was just suppressing my feelings. I just was able to go deeper and deeper into compassion for her and holding space for her to find new and better coping mechanisms for herself. And that I could support that. I did a lot of visual, her main symptom was visual. And it was also her brain, you know, the visual mechanisms in the brain. So she had to do a lot of visual therapy, which I found really fascinating. And that became like a meditation practice for me to do her visual therapy with her and just kind of do the same thing of a thought would come up, an irritable reaction would come up, and I could just like let it go, like a wave of water, and separate, which was an important thing to do. Just because she's having an upset, I didn't have to have an upset. And it became an active meditation to work with her without being triggered and without just, as I said, just girding myself and resisting and suppressing it, but just sort of allowing it. And that actually didn't really help her to move through her resistance. She was so frustrated. She'd been extremely intelligent and she just felt so stupid. You know, she always say that, I feel so stupid. She would say, well, my intellect is intact, but I just feel like my brain isn't working.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a kind of like a good example of what happens when you meditate a lot. Like you have these really deep insights when the mind is very quiet and deep and awareness is very clear and sharp. this is what like pristine awareness is like. It's just has that very vivid, penetrating insight that's just naturally there. And that unfolds and goes deeper. And you in a sense, automatically start having these incredible insights into the nature of consciousness and other people's, and you can experience where these come from. Well, that that sort of thing comes from doing a lot of meditation.
Right.
It's fantastic, you know.
Mm.
It was a wonderful gift. You know, I've never
Yeah.
regretted
Yeah.
the time that I spent with her. It was really precious.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was challenging at times. And, you know, people would, sometimes we'd be working with one of her therapists and my mother would say something, you know, that would normally be triggering, and they'd be like, you know, it's okay. You know, they would want to calm me down, but I wasn't reacting. And I would say, no, I know it is okay. You know?
Right, right. Yeah.
And it was, you know, it was a real gift. But I don't think I could have done it without the practice before that, so that I could, that because that's kind of like what we have to do with ourselves. You have to learn to treat the everyday mind. It's like a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for example, like one of the qualities in that situation is love and compassion for your mother. So in a sense, that those are some of the qualities that arise from a lot of meditation. And when those arise in the mind, they have a lot of insight and understandings of the mind that you've never thought of before, and that sort of thing. So
No, I
that's
was
what-
able
yeah.
to love her as my child, which was an
Yeah.
amazing gift. That
Yeah, right.
just unconditionally. And, you know, I love to powder her bottom. You know, I don't know where that came from. When I was a teenager, that would have been the last thing I
Right.
would have expected. But it absolutely, it was just this unconditional compassion and acceptance and patience. That was what I really needed to learn, was that kind of patience. And I don't think I would have had it without the years of practice that led up to it. And then having that deep relationship with her, but it shifted to a whole different level during this period. It was much deeper and, you know, much more.
Well, it's
Absolutely.
interesting. The thing that's coming to my mind, just so that I don't know. So the child becomes the parent to the parent who's becoming the child.
Right.
And you're accepting something that's new in terms of relationship, because it's not a reversal, but it's a harmony.
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
And we both agreed, and it was a really interesting conversation, actually, that we worked better this way. And I feel that was because she was able to give me more as a child than she had gotten.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Her mother was sick and then died when she was really young. You know, so she just didn't have that
Yeah.
imprinting.
So I will ask
And
people
so I
who
was
do.
able to forgive all that, and just, I was just glad that I could be there for her at that time to like mother her out, you know.
Mm.
And
Beautiful.
and it was partly because of her, the quality of her presence with me, that I had more to give, because she hadn't had the benefit of herself as a child.
Mm.
So I was able to say that, you know, well, what she gave me prepared me and filled me up enough that I would have it to give back. And
So
I did.
a question for everyone who meditates, because I say I do and I don't. But I mean, do you ever just have the sense of completion, you know, beyond the word? You're meditating, and then there's something like what you're describing to me, Marjorie, is a sense of, I mean, you've worked through things with your mother, and it strikes me that at some point this word completion would come to mind. That, this relationship is completed somehow. And I was wondering if anybody else has that same experience, those that meditate, where, with what frequency does the concept of completion come up?
I was at peace when she died because I felt we had completed, so much together.
Bruce, you were about to say something?
Yeah, it's my experience is that it becomes boundless. Is let the profound boundless nature of consciousness expands into areas of the mind that you didn't know that was there at all. But what comes along with it, sort of like the pristine mind, there's incredible clarity and direct, real certainty of the reality of it. So it kind of goes that way for me. It's just like understanding the nature of consciousness in the universe is endless. But in the process, of course, you just get better at it. You understand more things. You have a very large non-verbal understanding of things that you've never even dreamed of or could have possibly have imagined earlier.
Yeah.
And that's part of the nature of pristine mind. He got this incredible understanding of love and compassion and unfoldment and understanding why people suffer and what causes it. And it's just there, just like vividly clear understanding. And that just keeps growing deeper and deeper. That's my experience of it. So the completion means it's not the completion, it's more like it just keeps on expanding forever.
Okay, I have a question as I'm going to be the practicing student here, and it's a total non sequitur, but when you just said some words that I'm not going to repeat correctly, but it was about you understand, people, what they're going through with pain and suffering. So do you understand you can understand what they're going through, but you also understand why they're going through it?
Not only the why, but how you can help.
Okay, so let me segue directly to the brutal war that's being waged in Ukraine. So why are they going through it? And how can you help that pain and suffering?
Well, first of all, you have to be able to understand how a mind, like how does a mind like Putin unfold and manifest? How does a person get into that kind of place in the mind where he can do all that? This is the nature of how can I put it? Okay, it's sort of like a hate and believing profoundly that hate is actually reality. Like for Putin, in his mind, hate is reality. And you have to kind of understand how a mind can get into a place where they actually believe and manifest that hate is reality. And that goes back to basically what I call conditioned mind. It's from invariably he's involved in killing. When you have a history of killing people, you think it's okay to kill. You think it's normal. And they believe it's normal. And that's kind of the momentum behind what happens when you have volition based on ignorance. It's a good example of that. So you have to have a kind of a detached view of that. you can't take it personally.
Yeah.
So the mind actually perceives it quite well, and you just have a deep understanding of how diluted his mind really is. And but you also have to realize at the same time that it's impermanent. There's going to be maybe 100, maybe 1,000 lifetimes where he will actually transcend that and become a loving, compassionate person. You have to give that, or it's not necessarily give it, it's just that it's actually true. And then the mind has that insight of understanding that. And that's pretty universal. A lot of people have a lot of difficulties with a lot of things, and that's basically how it happens. But at the same time, because there's a lot of understanding of love and compassion, you also realize that that's not actually the true nature of that person. It's conditioned mind. They got there through making some pretty horrible mistakes, like killing a lot of people, that sort of thing.
Right.
So it kind of gives you a detachment, but deep insight all at the same time.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry to segue into the political realm, but there's just so much pain there that I'm divorcing the politics in my mind to, the cruelty that's causing so much pain and what's, what that's all about. Anyway, it's topical for me. Sorry if I've delved
No,
into it a bit more for the group.
but you have to realize that looking at the mind from that perspective doesn't reflect what's actually there. Like it's just you're being judgmental of somebody who's killing a lot of people and tremendous suffering. I mean, God, I wouldn't want to live in Ukraine. I mean, it'll be every day's hell, because you don't know if you're going to get bombed, or you're worried about your children and all kinds of stuff. It's horrible. But the thing is, you have to realize that in terms of spiritual unfoldment, all those people are unfolding, and all those kind of difficulties can actually be transcended, maybe in 100 or 1,000 lifetimes ahead of time. But that's kind of like the deeper understanding of the nature of spiritual unfoldment, or the nature of consciousness.
Okay.
That's kind of how I overview it.
Yeah, no, and that's very helpful to me, actually, to hear that. So thank you.
Yeah. The thing is, if you really want to unfold, the real practice to unfold is to practice compassion. Because if you practice compassion, all those deeper realities are there and evoked. And unfolding the depth of love and compassion has a very profound effect on the mind. Tremendous understanding and wisdom are all there to have. And getting lost into being judgmental is in a sense distraction to this the greater spiritual unfoldment that you're actually looking for, or actually what is actually reality, because actually your mind is doing that already. Anyway.
I naturally can't help thinking of what made somebody like that, and beyond one lifetime, but that there's probably some kind of a vicious cycle, as we were talking about, of attracting experience, but I don't think anybody is like that for no reason, without tremendous pain and suffering leading to that.
I think attracting experiences is a good way to put it. I think that we do attract experience, and sometimes people are in situations where all they do attract is, or what they attract most often, or maybe it's in their family, or maybe it's in their small circle of influence, are people who reinforce actual ill treatment of others. But in the meantime, they're still conditioning that person to believe that they don't have any worth outside of that. And it gets to be a whole messy, sticky situation, and it takes a lot, whether it's meditative practice, which is what we're talking about now, to help someone enter into a different understanding of what it means to be human.
And that it's
Right.
even possible.
It's possible.
Right.
It's possible. Well,
Well, yeah.
it's possible.
It's actually, yeah, it's more than possible. It's actually there to do. Like, this is the thing about meditating a lot, is that these deeper insights that you've never dreamt of before in your whole life arise spontaneously, and you have this profound insight of the nature of how that all works. So it gives you a very transcendent understanding of suffering.
But the question would be, how does one evoke whatever you need to evoke to help this person attract a different atmosphere for himself, so he could start to meditate and start to know what it would be like to be human? How does that happen?
Well, in a funny way, that's being judgmental, that they need that.
In a way it is, but that's my story and I'm sticking to it, Ad.
Yeah.
No, but no, what I was suggesting by that is that it seems that to me, from all of the conversations, that one has to come to one's own conclusion about that being the path to unfoldment.
Well,
And that,
and readiness,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
it can be very painful. Meditation is a lot like therapy, and it can hurt more before things start to get better.
Mm.
You know, I've had times where I just had to stop. It was so painful.
Yeah, well, you eventually transcend that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's a
I mean, you know,
stage along the way.
like I'm talking about when you've meditated for about like 20 years or something. It doesn't happen in a few months or anything like that, that's for sure.
And you asked what you could possibly do. I think I heard you right.
yes, you did.
In my experience, and I'm away from that now because I'm no longer living in Austin, there were a group of people, a large group of people who would get together and we would meditate and pray on the situation. And if we couldn't be at the facility, we would set a time and a date, and sometimes it would be almost universal and go around the world at the same time, the same date. This is what we're going to meditate on, and this is the prayers we're going to send. I truly believe that has a difference in people's frequency and the way they vibrate.
I believe that too. I believe that too.
I think that's along the lines of Ho'oponopono.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Just on a vibrational level,
Yes, yes, it is.
things can shift.
Yeah,
I have a very hard time, I'll just say, you know, true confessions here, with Donald Trump. And I don't even really see him as being like a person. He's like an effigy to me. Because
He's definitely he's a caricature.
right. And
Well, okay,
yeah.
well, yeah, well,
but talk about wounded, you know, he must just be so terribly wounded. It must be extremely painful to be him and to
Well,
be the way
okay.
he is. I do feel compassion, and that helps me back off from that judgment. So, but that's sort of, it starts out as an intellectual thing and then it becomes a heart thing for me. But I just think, well, what must have gone on just in this lifetime alone that makes people like that?
yeah, well, that's part of the key. Like, if you have to have some insight into how people get into the places where they are, and that's back to the momentum from difficult karma sort of idea. And once you understand that, well, then then you can be detached and compassionate at the same time. Like with Putin, for example, in a sense, he's really lost it, pretty obviously, right? For example, and it applies to Trump too in a different way. But if you kind of understand why or how he got there, and then basically know for certain that he still is going to unfold. Like with Trump, he actually believes that he's helping.
Right.
He thinks he's actually helping. He's good and he's helpful. That's in his mind. He actually thinks that's true.
And that people want him to do what he does and be the way he is.
Yeah, but
And
that's
they
separate.
do.
But that's separate from him.
Right.
In his own mind, he thinks he's a good person.
Right.
Right. And you have to kind of understand how that can happen in somebody's mind.
Well, I kind of see them both as monsters that we've created. And I feel that the United States is in a lot of ways responsible for what unfolded in Russia. As they were competing with us in the crazy, space war, race and all of that. I feel we kind of drove them to that extreme with our own extreme. And we had so much more freedom. They have so much history there. Talk about momentum. They have the momentum of such a difficult history that we really didn't have here. We brought our European history with us and imposed it on the people who happen to be living here, and all of that. But I feel we're all involved. We're all a party to it. The September 11th attacks were brilliant in a way, and they chose the perfect symbol to attack and a brilliant way to do it.
This is way off, but do you mind if I say something about 9/11? Lately, I am almost constantly running into somebody who wants to tell me their 9/11 story. We were out to dinner the other day, and the people sitting across from us, he was in New York and he was working in the building adjacent to the towers, and he was telling me his experience. And then another person just popped into my life and told me about their experience. And I'm not sure where this is coming from, but perhaps I need to talk about my experience with 9/11. I don't know. But it's just, I just keep running into it. It's kind of, I don't know, strange.
Well, yeah,
Something to contemplate for sure. And
yeah.
I would journal about it, or see what comes up for you.
It sounds like there's another shift coming. That's a forewarning.
Huh.
I feel that way too, and I was living in New York at the time.
Oh, wow.
We had been to I was outside of the city in Binghamton, but we had been to the towers several times because my husband's cousin Larry was one of the architects, one of the engineers who designed that type of cement that would allow for the sway and an implosion rather than an outward explosion. And we were there after it was built for dinner. And I had the most horrific feeling that I had to get out. I was in a blind state of panic. And in my mind, I translated that when my frontal lobe obviously wasn't working, because I called the waiter over and I asked him if he'd please lower the drapes because I was feeling claustrophobic so I could see out. And in his typical New Yorker way with his hand on his hip said, "Lady, you're in the clouds. There are no curtains." But I was so overwhelmed. I could not wait to get out of the building. And then actually saw the plane fly into the building. And I was in Texas on that day when I saw the plane fly into the building. And at that point, the only thing I could do is, I was in a school, is encourage teachers to turn off their television sets because they had them running like on a continuous loop and all these little children were seeing that. So I don't know. I don't know why it keeps hitting me. But it could be a foreboding. I don't know.
Well, I think it's something to meditate on, you know, and work with it like a dream and ask it, you know, ask the what it has to tell you.
You can do that. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I can do that.
Well, what in terms of being transcendent about it, this is kind of the kind of insight that you acquire from meditating a lot. You actually understand how something like that can occur, and it's like as horrific it was, you have to realize that it still was caused by a deluded mind. And then you have to have an intuitive understanding of how somebody can be that deluded. And that kind of gives you the ability to be detached about it and allowed compassion to be present at the same time. And that's the kind of overall insight you have in the pristine mind. It has that remarkable ability to see deeply into the nature of consciousness and people and stuff like that. I'm kind of going back to the meditation theme.
Yeah, I'm taking
Yeah,
yours.
yeah.
You know, one of the things that I just like to bring forward is this concept of courage. Kids have taught me a lot throughout my career. And one of the things I learned from the children, and this has to do with compassion and love and also courage, is that we as Americans, we as people who raise children, we hear that what we want, what all Americans want for their children is for them to be better and to succeed beyond them. And when you work with people and you have to help them gain the courage to change and think differently, what you learn is you not only have to help them learn, but you have to help them unlearn all that negative feedback because it implodes in those little brains. And they have to be able to not only face their own fears in their mind and the fear of having to do the actual work that you have to do, but the fear of being outside of their family, the fear of becoming the other. And I wish when I was doing a lot of this, I knew more about mindfulness and meditation because I think those would have been great tools to help those children.
I'm going to bow out, but I want to thank everybody for the evening while I'm still talking. So have a great one, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, Dad.
Thanks
Good
for
night.
being with us, Ed.
Marshall,
Okay.
did we lose Bart?
I'm sorry, he's doing something with the meal.
Okay, okay.
We hope it's getting near the end, and it's been just really maddening.
Oh,
But
I think by the way, I think you gave a great talk on meditation.
you girls certainly did. It was really excellent. Thank you.
But we lost some of our slides and they were really good too.
The slides were wonderful. At first I thought that was somehow that his publishers or he had put it together, but you put it together.
Yes,
That's excellent.
thank you very much. We enjoyed it.
I liked how you weaved in some of your own experiences, because that's what meditation is like. It just keeps on going deeper and more good things keep on happening. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it was a book that when I started, I was excited, but I didn't know that it really is a great book, but it took me really getting, really focusing on it now for a week to absorb that. It was a powerful book, and Bruce, thank you for sharing that with us. It opened a lot of doorways for me that I couldn't see until that book.
That's great. That's excellent.
remarkable. Sometimes someone comes into your life and they says exactly the right thing and pushes you or helps you exactly the right direction. And I think both Cheryl and I experienced that while reading this book. We started out thinking it was going to be one thing, and it turned out to be something totally different to us.
Yeah, that, and then the two of us usually work simultaneously together, and we each decided, we figured out how to do our part in the presentation, and we individually worked independently this time, and it miraculously came together, and it was really, it was exciting to see that it was effortless, actually. It was an example of effortlessness.
Which means to me that it was something we needed to know.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Well, that's one of the qualities of, after meditating for a very long time, everything is effortless. It's has that quality.
And I didn't know how I would get it done, actually, but then I did it. And I was like, okay, here's the perfect example of,
It unfolded itself through.
yes. There he is.
Yes.
Hey,
Just asking about you. We had a wonderful presentation. You'll
Are
have
you
to watch
home?
the tape.
Yes, I will.
Are you home, Bart?
Yes, I'm home. Is Barbara there? Is Barbara there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Can I ask Bruce, that you said something, and I can't remember the words, but something that made me feel like some of this experience is actually cumulative, that our past lives kind of drive some of the things we're led to think about in meditation? Or am I wrong?
That's what they say.
Yeah. Yeah.
They say even our bodies. At one point I was doing yoga in New York, and the teacher there said, "Oh, you've done yoga for a lot of lifetimes." And I thought that was nutty, because I didn't have any idea of this idea that you
Reincarnate.
that you reincarnate with the body that goes with your past experience to provide you with the right experience in this lifetime. So in a way, if it's one that's good for certain things, you've earned it, or if it's challenging in other ways, there's lessons for you to learn with the challenges, I have like really good turnout in my hips, but now that I'm older, it's a problem, so I was very flexible. I could easily put my 2 feet behind my head like this.
Wow.
And just sit there just naturally, very easily. But now I have, because my hips have such good turnout, dancers would always comment on it, but now it's a problem because the right one pops out,
Wow.
so there's always two sides. But that's what I was told, that it was from many lifetimes of doing yoga. And it always feels very familiar and comforting. I don't know how else to put it. It feels like going home again. So I think it was that for me many times. But it's all connected.
Yeah, yoga sometimes for me, I'm always amazed at how it is an accumulative thing where I if I haven't done it for a while, and then I think, oh God, this is just going to be like starting over from the beginning, and the body has that memory, and it's just amazing how it remembers how to do things that you don't think you really have the ability to, And then I think when you're doing group yoga, you get the power of the energy of the room.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
that also adds to one's ability to do things you wouldn't think you could.
And you're probably also maybe unconsciously remembering, past lifetimes of doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
And, as we say, triggering that.
Yeah, our yoga teacher is very well trained and really loves it. But she doesn't, some of these people view yoga as kind of just a incredible athletic sprint endurance thing, and doing 97 downward dogs in 60 seconds, sort of thing. And but she ends up having very simple movements that really get everything kicked in, and she always has a pattern for
Right.
doing these things, doing this first and this second and this third, and it just the whole thing flows together very nicely, and you're very centered at the end of it. You're very your body and your mind are in sync, so
And I would say she has incredible intuition for what we need, and it works for everybody in the group, which is really interesting to me.
but she really,
It seems like, well, it's perfect for me, but how could it be perfect for everybody? But everybody has the same reaction.
she does
Wow.
these yoga teacher camps for like two weeks at a crack, several times a year, and she's teaching 400 or 500 students in these things.
Wow.
So she's seen many variations of what people can do and can't do, and how to get these things across. And it's a real gift to be able to be a teacher's teacher. That's
Right.
Yes.
She's
Yeah.
teaching them how to teach.
yeah.
That's
So anyway, where do we want to go? Do we want to wrap this up here?
sure. We missed you, but we had
Bruce,
a session.
Bruce was helpful in his responses and interpretations, and expanded the presentation, which was excellent.
yeah, and I'll look at it. I apologize for the interruption.
No worries.
You'll enjoy it.
You'll see the shortened
Oh,
version.
are you gonna email me the Canva or whatever?
Yeah, I did yesterday, but that wasn't the finished product. So I'll do it today. I'll do it when we get off. I'll send you the
And-
finished product.
Send it as an Acrobat file.
Well, it's really big, Bart, because it's got video in it. So I may not be able to do that, but I can give you the link and then you can download it locally.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah,
Or
just
you
get,
could send out the link.
Yeah,
It
well,
might
or
be
just-
better for
or
you to
just-
forward the link.
yeah, just send me if it's on Canva. Doesn't Canva?
So so you open it up, so I'll send you the Canva link and that'll give you the ability to open it. And then from there you can download.
Yeah, just send me the Canva link. That's fine.
Okay,
That's all I
okay.
need. I don't need the
I will.
That was very beautiful,
and thank you for putting it together.
creative.
Thanks for asking us to do
We
it.
enjoyed it. I think I'm still missing some slides. Let me see if I can get them put back in the presentation.
Okay,
We
okay.
lost a few slides along the way this meeting for some reason.
Well, take your time, even if we send it out tomorrow, make sure it's what you want it to be, and you don't have.
If you send the link, you can be updating it too. So
Right, yeah.
so just the link isn't going to change.
Right. Well, I did send you the link last night, unless it was like, it was 2:30, I think, when I finally quit.
I don't recall seeing it, or I could have inadvertently deleted it. Okay,
Okay,
I'll have to go back and look.
all right, well, we'll send it once we finish up here.
Okay, then let's wrap it up, and
Well, they say the best way to learn is to teach.
yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good night,
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah, good night. And thanks, Bruce, for inspiring all this.
Okay.
For the idea.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. Have a good.
You
Okay.
too.
Bye-bye.